Hi and welcome. In this video we're going to talk about categories. And before we do that, I want to show you an example of a simple application that just simply counts the words that we enter in a text field. Now you can see in my zip file, actually it's a storyboard in this case, I've just set up a simple application that contains a UI text field and a label. In my view controller, I have a property that goes to the label, and of course it's wired up to that label, and that property is called numWords, and it's a UI label property. And then I have an action, text entered, on that UI text field sender. And I want to show you how to wire up a text field so that when that text field is exited, it will use that action method. That text entered, of course, is wired to the text field's did end on exit method. And when we press the return key, however that return key is labeled, two things will happen. The keyboard, by default, will automatically go away, and the did end on exit method will be fired, or the event will happen. When that event happens, our view controller's text entered method will fire. Excuse me. Okay, so in text entered, I'm doing a couple of things here. I've set up an NS character set. Now, of course, if you haven't met NS character set, I would encourage you to do so, and you can do that by clicking character set here, and it shows you a short description. And then you can also go straight to the header file as if you had command clicked it, or you can go to the class reference in the documentation. But I encourage you to do that with NS character set. NS character set just is a set of characters. So here we have specified the space character to be NS character set with characters in string, and then just a simple space string. Then I want a word array, or an array of words, and I get that from the sender's text by using that character set with the method components separated by characters in set. And my set is this space character set that I set up just now. And then finally, the word count is the count of the components in that array. So numWords, which is our label, text, is going to be a string with the format word count integer, where the integer comes from the count of the word array that we set up in this NS array here. So that when we run this application, and it'll run here in a moment, if we're lucky, there we go, we have a successful build. When we run this application, here we have our text field, and when I click on it or tap in it, then I can type, and I have the keyboard, and I'll just type, "This is a test," and hit enter, and it says word count of 4. Okay, so that's great. It turns out that we would probably, if we had an application that wanted to count the number of words in a large text string, we would probably not want to do this word count every time we reached any sort of large text string. It would be really neat if we could somehow make word count, that word count method, into a method of NS string itself. And that's what a category will do for us. A category is a way to add methods to an already existing class, even if we don't have the source code for that class. So here's how we do that. The first thing I'm going to do is right-click here wherever I want to put my category, and I'm going to add a new file. And this new file is going to be of type Objective-C category. I'll click Next. And I want this category on, in other words, the category of the class I'm extending this with category is going to be NS string. So the category is on NS string. And I'm just going to call this counted. And you're probably thinking right now, if you've never seen categories before, how do we know that counted refers to NS string? It's because that the file name that is created for us, we don't get to tell it what the file name is going to be NS string plus counted. So we know that it's a category on NS string, and we'll see that in the next step. When we click next, it's going to ask us where we want to save it. We're going to save it in the category folder. For this, the application is called category. We're going to save it in the category folder. We'll create it. And now you see we have this odd looking thing, NSString plus counted H and NSString plus counted M. Now I want you to look at the header file. It looks a little bit different. We have this odd notation here. This is an NSString. This category is an NSString, but the category itself is called counted, and that category name is in parentheses. Likewise, in the implementation, it is NSString and then parens counted. All right, so let's take the next step, which would be to add a method to this category that counts words in a string. So all we need is to define a method, and we'll say it returns an unsigned integer. We could say unsigned int here, but let's use the Objective-C indication for that, NSU integer. And of course, that is a primitive type. NSU integer is just aliased as an int, as an unsigned integer. So we're returning that type. And let's just call this method word count. All right. And what do we want to do? Well, once again, we want to get a category that is, we want to get a character set that is just the space, and then get an array that's the components of our string separated by a space, and then return that number of the count of components in that array. So let's go back to our view controller and pull this code out and use whatever we can. So we'll just copy this. Actually, we'll do that. And then in our NSString plus counted method, we're going to implement word count. So we need something that returns, oops, sorry about that. We need something that returns an NSU integer. And the method is called word count, and there it is. And now we can paste that code that we just copied out. So we can use the character set. That's good. Now, we need to add a word array, but we don't have sender. In fact, let's think about this. How would we get the string that this refers to? Well, it's a category on NSString. The NSString itself that we're looking at is self. Now, make sure you understand that. When we write a category, we're extending the class. The class here is NSString. The string that we are examining is the NSString that is that object, and so we can use self here to inspect the content of the NSString that we're dealing with. So that's all we have to do there. Now we've got an array of the words separated by the spaces in the string. We don't have numwords.txt, but what really are we doing here? Well, we're just returning a value, right? So let's go ahead and return the value. We want to say return, and then what is it? It's the count of the elements in the word array. So we can just say, because NSArray already has a count method, we can say word array count. And there we go. So now our category is finished. And let's save this, and we'll save this, and we'll save the view controller. So now in text entered, what do we want? We want the sender's word count. So we're going to put that into the numwords text field. So let's do that. We can say numwords, actually we should say self, so that we call the setter self.numwords.text is equal to NSString, string with format, and then what do we want to say? Word count. And if I could type today, that would be great. And then an integer. And then what are we going to do? We're going to call word count on sender.text. So we can do that this way. Now, it's giving us an error. Why is it giving us an error? Well, because word count is not a method on NSString. It's a method on NSString plus counted. So one other thing we need to do is import NSString plus counted. And we have it right there in our tooltip text. And there we go. We're all done. So now we've got a category on NSString that allows us to take the count of words in any string. And this will work for any NSString. We have added this method for any NSString where we do two things in our application. The first is we have to have the category included in our application. And the second thing is we must import it anywhere we want to use it. But it is an extension to the existing NSString class. So when we run, we'll see that we get the same thing. Expected after method prototype. Oh, sorry. What am I looking at here? Just a moment. We're in NSString counted. Oh, this is the header file. Sorry about that. And then we'll get rid of this. So NSString plus counted, prototype, and then, okay. My mistake. Sorry about that. So here we go. Now this time we'll type, this is another test of word counting. Go hit enter. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. So what do we got? We have a new method that is applied to any NSString where we use the NSString plus counted category and import it into whatever class we want to use this category in. Okay, so there's been a lot of new topics here. We talked about a text field and how to deal with that. We talked about NS character set and how those are used. And finally, and probably most importantly, we discussed the idea of what a category is and how to create one and how to use a category on an existing class, whether or not we have the source code for that class. Thank you very much.